At MidAmerican Energy, we're one company serving 1.6 million people who all need energy that's available 24/7. That's why we work 24/7. That's why we make investments in our systems that make us more resilient to extreme weather. That's why we generate power from all available resources to cover the variables in supply and demand. And that's why when the power is knocked out, we work around the clock to restore power to you. MidAmerican Energy, obsessively, relentlessly at your service.
It looks like we've got everybody in who's been waiting. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Happy Thursday morning. It's another warm and sunny day, and I'm starting to fear that once again we're going to switch from summer to winter without any fall. I'm Jared Strong. I'm a reporter for the Gazette. I've got my lumberjack shirt on and my lumberjack beard. I don't know if it's big enough yet. Winter's coming, but I'm ready to discuss the great outdoors. We have gathered to talk about public lands, its benefits, and the relatively small amount of it that we have in Iowa, largely due to the prevalence of agriculture in our state. Iowa has about 36 million acres of land in total, and about 85% of that is devoted to crops and livestock. I want to thank MidAmerican Energy for sponsoring this talk. With us today are Dr. Roel Lopez, the director of Texas A&M's Natural Resources Institute. He studies wildlife ecology and natural resources management. We have Ben Bonner, the Buchanan County Conservation Director. He's relatively new in his current gig, but he's worked for the county for a long time. He also has a side hustle as a first-generation farmer. And we have Rick Henley of Backcountry Hunters, Iowa chapter. The group helps facilitate the transfer of private land for public use, including by providing funding for it. And it appears that we might have just lost Rick. Well, let's start off. Dr. Lopez, how much public land do we have in Iowa, and compared with other states? And are we typical of a state that is so agriculture focused?
You are, and I sent you two slides. I'm not sure if you want to share that with the audience or not, but I thought first of all, appreciate the invitation to speak with you today, and don't know much about Iowa, but know a little bit more after doing a few things to sort of maybe set the stage, if you will. Are you sharing that slide, that first one?
We are going to share it in another. We're not going to screen share it. Apparently, there might be some issues with that, but there will be a way for people.
Yeah. So when you look at Iowa, it's about 36 million acres, most of which is cropland. Not surprising. Open space is a smaller percentage, and public land. Iowa's ranked number 47 in the U.S., so about 97% private land. Texas is very similar in that regard. The only difference, if you were to look at the two maps that are generated, one for Texas, the other for Iowa, is cropland flips with us for rangeland. So the majority of land in Texas is rangelands for grazing and so forth, as opposed to cropland, which is characteristic of Iowa. The other thing that's interesting, so both states, Texas is 45 in terms of percent public land, about 4%, and that's actually inflated just because there's military bases and things of that sort that are considered public. So it's probably a little closer to Iowa, which is at 2.8% or what have you. In looking at the maps, the bulk of the public land for Texas is actually in West Texas, Big Bend, some large state parks and so forth. In comparison, Iowa, most of the public lands follow riparian corridors. It looks like, rivers and lakes and so forth. And so again, a little bit, there's some similarities, but there's also some differences. And most of the development change, we did a quick analysis for Iowa and looking at changes over the last 20 plus years. In the map, it shows up as red. And not surprising, similar to Texas, it's in and around these urban centers, and so that's where most of that development occurs through expansion and so forth. So that's sort of the situation where we are now um, in Texas, but also in just looking at some of the trend data for you guys in Iowa as well. So fairly small percentage.
The trending, is Iowa comparable to, is that common across a lot of states, the public land acquisitions, or?
It really varies. To be honest, I think for Iowa, you have a very strong stronghold in terms of private land ownership and farmland and so forth, which honestly is a blessing. For my opinion, we're losing a little over 1,000 acres a day in Texas. The population. The last year we added about 500,000 people to the state's roster. So when you look at Iowa's got about a little over 3 million people. So we added 500,000 just in the last year. And so in the last 20 years or so, we've added about 20 to 25 million Texans. And so that has offered some pretty unique challenges for us in trying to sustain this open space, farms, ranches, family forests, and so forth.
Ben, what's the status of public land in your county, which for those in our audience who don't know is just north of Cedar Rapids, east of the Cedar Falls, Waterloo area. Do your residents have enough places to recreate outdoors? And when they do they stay in your county or do they go somewhere else?
Yeah, so I pulled some numbers yesterday, and it sounds like maybe we're slightly below the state average on how much of our county is actually in public land ownership. There's 365,627 acres in Buchanan County, and the Buchanan County Conservation Board owns and manages 3,067 acres. So we're less than 1% of the total land in Buchanan County. Um, I do think we're fairly fortunate. We have 41 parks and recreation areas that are kind of spread throughout the county. Again, a lot of those are primarily concentrated along the Wapsipinicon River, similar to what was discussed earlier. I think it probably depends a little bit on who you ask, whether or not we have enough places to recreate. I personally don't think we have enough. And we have, our board does put a big focus on trying to acquire more and provide more opportunities for people to get outside and experience the outdoors. A lot of our areas do get a lot of use by our county residents, but we are seeing a lot of influx from other counties and people from out of state as well that are coming in and using our campgrounds and parks and stuff like that in the last few years. So,
Well, and you mentioned before this talk that you guys are wrapping up a project to create a new campground, right? Is that newly acquired public land, or is this a campground that you've established in an area that?
yeah, so this has been before my time with the conservation board, but in early 2020, we bought 15 acres on the north side of Fontana Park, which is our main park, kind of on the north end of Buchanan County. And we've since developed that entire area. We created a new bison and prairie learning area that expanded our previous bison pasture, and we have a new corral system that as of this year now has a new concrete recreational trail that goes around it to where people can walk from our nature center to go see our bison. And then the campground actually got built in our old bison pasture. We added 26 new full hookup campsites, all of which are ADA compliant, and new shower house, playground. That wrapped up in spring of 20 or this past spring, and we've seen a ton of use, and it's been very popular so far.
How many buffaloes do you have? Wait, is it buffalo or buffaloes?
But normally we say bison, but
Okay.
yeah. So we have a bull and two cows, and then we just had a new baby bison here in the last month or so. So that was pretty popular. We've had a lot of people out coming to check that out. So
That's cool. Rick, tell us what your group does.
Yeah, so I'm on the state board of directors for Iowa chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Um, so if you're not familiar, Backcountry, basically we have all 50 states represented either in state or regional chapters. But like I said, I'm on the Iowa board. We started our Iowa chapter, I think, in 2019. And essentially what our chapter really is focused on is access for hunters and anglers. Obviously a big part of that is public land advocacy. But also, there's also many private as well uh, uh, that we that we focus on too. But again, public land advocacy is really our main focus. A lot of the money that we are able to raise stays here in Iowa. Part of that goes back to the national headquarters in Missoula, Montana, but we get to keep a lot of it for our own decisions as far as um, doing stuff right here in Iowa. So that was a big thing that pushed me towards our organization, and I think is something that makes us very popular because of that. And what obviously we're fairly new here in the state of Iowa, but so we don't have significant funds, but we've worked on several different projects of being able to buy land to put into the public domain, and also bring attention to some of these different projects throughout the state and
Rick, I'm going to stop your video just to give you some more bandwidth, hopefully.
As we talked about, and I'm sure we'll talk about more with like air.
All right, Rick, hope you come back to us. You're still live, just we don't have video of you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, you're breaking up just a little bit.
Okay.
But I think you should probably be a little bit better off now that I stopped your video. So let's just
Okay.
forward here.
Nobody wants to see my face anyway.
Ha! So I'm going to throw this out to everybody, and Rick, if you want to try to talk first, we can see if your audio is going again. What is the importance of these public places for people and for nature and the environment? What do you guys do when you go out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the the access to the public
All right, Rick, you're breaking up pretty bad.
land is uh, it's significant for everybody. I mean, if you want to, I think everybody enjoys the outdoors in some way.
All right, Rick, why don't you try reconnecting? I'm gonna mute you since we've got some issues there. Ben, I'll toss it to you. What's the importance of public places, and what do you yourself do when you go outside?
Anymore, it's kind of changed over time. So when I was younger, I utilized public land quite a bit for hunting, fishing, trapping. It was all when I had a little more time than I do now. Now I have 3 kids in the family, and I find myself using trail systems in the area quite a bit more. We're very fortunate that we have the Cedar Valley Nature Trail running through the south end of Buchanan County that's recently been paved, and that's been really nice to be able to get out and pull my kids in a bike carrier, go on a walk and stuff like that. We do also go out and explore a lot of our Buchanan County areas as well, because we do a good job of keeping the trails mowed. I do think public lands are important for a wide variety of reasons. Obviously, they do provide opportunities for people that don't have access to go and hunt and fish private land, a place to go. And I've really been, I guess my eyes have been really open in the last while as to how many people within the county and people from without the county come in to go hunting and fishing and whatnot. We're currently building a wetland project, or a wetland down at one of our bigger wildlife areas. And when I was down visiting the project the other day, we had several people from Black Hawk County roll in, and we're going hunting in the area. So it's been cool to see, like, how much they are getting used. But they are important for other reasons as well. They do help with water quality, economic development, rural revitalization, and public health. It's been interesting since I've been in my role, and where we found funding for some of our projects, and a lot of it has actually come from tourism grants, health grants, and stuff like that for the projects that we're doing. So I think they have quite a bit more impact than just what you would traditionally think, from people using them for outdoor recreation and public hunting and stuff. So
Is that how you judge your success, by whether or not you've got plates from other counties or other states coming to hang out with you?
yeah, it's kind of, I guess. I do think it's really neat to see, and I think like online, all the online hunting atlases and that type of stuff help a lot with like people finding places to go and utilize. But yeah, it's definitely been interesting to see, and even with our camping and whatnot too, we're getting a lot of people coming in from Wisconsin, Minnesota, different places that are utilizing our facilities. It's not just our locals that are benefiting from the projects that we've been doing. So
Very good. Roel, you want to add to this?
How I use public lands here in Texas is the question.
Oh, that's part of it, yeah. But then also just the overall, the overall benefits.
Yeah, so again, Texas is very similar to Iowa, where we're a private land state, and so the availability or access to public lands obviously offers recreational opportunities in different ways, from consumptive uses, as that was just described, to non-consumptive use and so forth. And so Iowa, we've struggled in being able to provide that level of access, especially with a pretty rapidly growing population. And so, I think as a state, we've attempted to look at private public partnerships to facilitate access, leasing lands for hunting, for example, from private landowners. We've looked at use of conservation easements to connect public lands, but also that are still maintained as private lands. So we have a trail, for example, coming out of Austin that's a public access trail, but it's both private and public lands, and it's through these kind of lease agreements and so forth. So I think a lot of what we need to think about in thinking about Iowa and what's you guys are attempting to do there is think of those kind of innovations and strategies that can facilitate that. And so so that's how we've approached that aspect of it, I guess. And as a Texan, I guess similar to what was said before, grew up hunting, fishing, camping, and so public lands are really important. But the other piece that I would add for consideration from a state that's really experiencing rapid change is public lands serve as anchors, but private lands serve as buffers to those. So I want you to think about that. So if you've got these public lands, these trails and so forth, having private lands that are still in open space, working lands and so forth, serves to sort of enhance that overall experience. And so that's an opinion, a perspective, but that's the way we've approached it here in Texas, and hopefully that kind of makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for some reason, when I think of hunting in Texas, I think of people shooting wild boar out of helicopters. Is that something that you've done before?
I have not. It's like every state's got some image, right? And so there is some of that, but I think there's also other aspects to it. I mean, having been to Iowa times, it's not all cropland, and there's a little bit of a variety in the state and so forth. And um, so yes and no. I've never hunted from a helicopter, and very few people do. And so, but those are the things that they highlight, right?
I'm scared of helicopters. Those things don't coast to the ground when the engines fail, you know. I'll stick to small planes, I think.
We do have quite an issue with feral hogs, and so we do have professionals that control hogs in that way as well. So that's a pretty efficient way for doing that.
Rick,
As
you're back. You're back, Rick. You appear to be working okay. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about, you're kind of fortunate. You live somewhat close to a pretty expansive public area where you can hunt, but you are aware that that is not the norm for most hunters in the state, probably, right?
Yeah, correct. And I mean, it's kind of funny that like when I first started hunting, I guess I didn't realize how little land there was around Iowa because I felt, I have, I'm fairly close to the Hawkeye public hunting area, just between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City, which is a pretty large section. And so I kind of just assumed like they were all across the state. Now I kind of realize I am pretty fortunate to, I'm 5 minutes away from there. And even though I do, some hunting on private land, I go out there all the time as well. It's just kind of is a good supplement, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate, and obviously it's right between two of the larger metro areas, I guess, in Iowa. And but there's times too it gets really busy out there, so there's a lot of people that access it. But yeah, I'm absolutely very fortunate to be close by to a decent sized area of public land.
Yeah, what areas of the state are severely lacking in public hunting ground?
Well, all of it. Um, yeah, I mean, definitely get out in the west side of the state. You see very, very few public areas, and I think we kind of discussed. I mean, you have some counties they might have just one little small public land area that they can hunt on, and I guess I haven't been to any of them, but I got to imagine they just get so many people there, on an opening weekend or whatever it might, a busy weekend that um, to the point where I mean they might not be of use to people because of that. You got so many people hunting it. You get so many people on an area that everything's going to be gone, obviously. So, but yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, we know, like I said, there's a few good public areas around Cedar Rapids, Iowa City there, and Des Moines has a couple nice areas. Obviously, the Mississippi River, a bunch of areas there. But outside of that, it can be pretty slim pickings for sure.
Yeah. All right, so guys, it seems that every year we have a proposed bill or multiple bills at our state house that are meant to curb the uptake of private land by the Department of Natural Resources and by counties, and it's most often couched in this argument that the land that's acquired is most often less desirable and might be cheaper for beginning farmers to obtain. Roel, can you tell me, is this a common dispute in other states? Is there this conflict in Texas too? And what's happening right now in Texas as far as public land acquisitions go?
Sure. So I think the back and forth between private and public is common in states across the U.S. and so forth, and understandably, right? The private land ownership is something that's really valued and protected and so forth in our country. So we've attempted to address that through partnerships with private landowners. I kind of alluded to some of those already, lease agreements and so forth. One of the things that happened here in Texas this last year, and this is very unusual. It hadn't happened in a while. So much like Iowa, there was an interest in trying to increase the amount of public lands, and we went through a process that involved kind of trying to understand the broader value of land, farms, ranches, etc. But then also trying to understand the public need for outdoor recreation experiences and so forth. And we try to marry those two together. So basic data or information was basically used in a report that ultimately went to the state legislature to create a fund for $2 billion for public land acquisition. And so we're Texas Parks and Wildlife is our DNR version, and TPWD basically is hitting their 100th anniversary of state parks, and so that Sentinel Conservation Fund, as it's now being called, just recently passed, and so they're being strategic in terms of working with willing sellers and trying to find properties that makes the most sense. Access is not so limiting. As I mentioned during my opening remarks, most of our public lands, large land holdings, are actually in West Texas, which is probably about 8 hours drive from the big urban centers. So it's not really accessible. It'd be easier for you to go to Oklahoma or Louisiana than to go to West Texas. I mean, it's pretty far out. But that's something that's just happened. That is happening now, and they're going through a process to identify opportunities from willing landowners to again conserve these open spaces for public land use.
Yeah, your state's huge. I always feel whenever on the rare occasion I drive to Texas, I cross the state line. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm almost there, and I'm really only like halfway to wherever I need to get to.
Yeah.
Ben, do you feel this conflict at the county level as far as public land acquisitions go?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily hear it about the acquisitions that we have done within Buchanan County. The last land acquisition that our conservation board did was in 2018. I, I, I think I do hear it more broadly and thrown out that, county conservations are taking land away from beginning farmers, which I always have to chuckle at a little bit because getting into farming, I watch real estate a couple times a day and then the plat book as to who's actually purchasing the ground, and it's not the county conservation board. So, land that I would, normally, potentially try to acquire to, increase the size of my operation seems like is getting bought up by, larger farmers, or we're seeing a lot of investment from out of state LLCs and whatnot. I kind of had my eyes open to this to begin with. My last position, I was the Benton County Weed Commissioner, and we dealt with noxious weed complaints on private ground. And in order to handle those situations, you have to mail a letter directly to the landowner. And I was having a heck of a time trying to track some of these people down to solve the issues. And as I got kind of investigating it more, it's fairly widespread throughout the counties that I've worked in. So again, not saying that I blame anybody for, trying to acquire more ground or anything like that, but I don't think it's accurate to paint us as, the ones that are taking land away from beginning farmers. So.
Yeah. Well, and I alluded to this before. Everyone who's watching, Ben is a bit of a unicorn in this state in that he is successfully, I think, I mean, you're on the road to being a first generation farmer, right? You don't have farming in your family, but why have you gone down that path, and how has it been challenging?
It's mainly the same challenges you run into with the conservation board is finding enough funding to make it all happen. I mean, land has gone up so much in value in the last 5 years or so. The first farm that I bought, I think I bought for around $5,000 an acre, and now if you can find anything, in the $7,000 to $8,000 range, you're really doing well. A lot of the more productive ground in our county seems to be going in the $12,000 to $13,000 range now. So it just gets to where it's so expensive to get started that unless you're part of a farming family that's been in it for quite a while, it's a big challenge. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so there are avenues you can take to try to make it happen, but it's an uphill battle. So.
And you're going for now, the alfalfa and goat route, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I started out where I farm some of my family, or rent some of my family's ground now, where I raise about 30 acres of alfalfa and 10 acres of grass hay, and then I'm working on developing some pasture at my home place where I can have goats eventually. So it's kind of slowly finding a way to break into it, but.
Yeah. Ben is taking pre-orders for goat meat if anyone out there is.
Yeah, if anybody's in the market.
Ben, my dad is a rancher, goat rancher, and yeah, you're gonna regret that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I've always heard kind of keeping them in is the challenge. So
That
unfortunately, the farmstead where I live, I don't have any remnant buildings from the original farmstead or any fencing. So that's been my main challenge, is trying to determine what the best course is to keep them in, so I'm not causing a problem for the neighbors. So.
and my comment was framed within that uh, context. So yes, you better put in a good fence, because boy, they could get everywhere. So get out easy. So
Yeah.
Just park
Yeah,
some.
and that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, you make sure you park some junk vehicles in there so they have things to climb on. Maybe that'll keep them in. I don't know.
Yeah, I keep them entertained.
Rick, have you witnessed this conflict, this pushback to creating more public land?
Yep. Kind of a couple of the projects that we talked about, the land acquisitions that we've helped with. I don't know that we saw anything directly related to those, but our organization is part of the Iowa Conservation Alliance, the ICA, which is essentially a lobbying group consisting of a whole bunch of different conservation organizations in the state. And we certainly through ICA have had to fight that legislation every year. Uh, and obviously we're always very, very opposed to it. We're very vocal about getting people opposed to it because, yeah, I mean, like I said, we're public land advocates, and if we can't get any more public land, then well, there goes our ideas, obviously. So, and I mean, we're not adversarial to private landowners, to the farmers. I mean, we know that we're never going to have kind of public land in Iowa like they do out west. It's never going to happen. We don't want it to happen. But we think these instances where there can be the willing buyer, willing seller, and we can get more public land available to us. Obviously, we want that opportunity. And if one of these groups is the high bidder, then this is America. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? The highest bidder buys the land. So again, we're not adversarial to private landowners, to farmers. They do a lot of great work for conservation and access as well in the state. But yeah, we just want our opportunity as well.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for a bit here. I'd welcome any questions from the audience. We do have one so far. From Martin, who says Iowa state government has made state park and recreation area expansion essentially non-existent. I mean, they are acquiring lands, but maybe not to the extent that some people would want them to. And Martin says this has left any expansion to counties of which a few larger counties have passed bond issues to address. Is this a good model for Iowa? Roel, can you speak to that a little bit? Like as far as like public land acquisitions go, is it, should it be the state? Should it be the county? Where is it most effective?
So again, I'll give you my opinion. I think it needs to be a combination of both. The challenge for the state is the cost. Just the access to those type of funds. As I mentioned, we were lucky with the Sentinel Conservation Fund. It's something that Ben said that really stuck in my mind is just the increasing cost of land. $5,000-6,000 an acre, as high as 7,000-8,000. In Texas, there are parts near these urban centers where $25,000-30,000 an acre is not unusual. And so you just reach a point where it's just it's hard to purchase those type of landscapes. And so I think being able to look at it from a partnership perspective, county, the a process of use of bonds and so forth has been real successful in Texas for similar type projects. And so I think something like that could really work for Iowa in terms of creating public access opportunities.
Ben, what of the public land in your county in Buchanan, what's the mix of state versus county?
I wish I would have looked that up before this. We do have a fair amount of state ground along the Wapsie, but I can't tell you off the top of my head how many acres they own. We do manage one little area for the DNR. That's a river access. But yeah, they do have some ground that adjoins us there. But yeah, I think we're by far the biggest public landholder within Buchanan County. So.
And do you think in your county that it's likely that the state will expand its acquisitions there, or is it, the more public land is going to be up to you guys, basically?
I would assume it's probably going to be up to us. I haven't really heard much of anything about the state acquiring ground in our area anyway. Yeah, and it is a challenge for us too. I mean, if we're going to acquire a piece of property, we have to be very particular about what we go after. We do have like a set of criteria and score each land acquisition. It kind of has to break a certain threshold for us to go after it. Um, it, a lot of it due to the fact that we only have a few funding sources that we can utilize to purchase them through grant funding. Normally we don't have enough money laying around to go purchase $1 million property anymore, and that is one of the challenges. It's just gotten so expensive that the grant funding that we do have available sometimes will get exhausted on one or maybe two properties throughout the entire state. So.
Are the people who want their land to become part of the public areas in your county, are they willing to take a lesser price than market value to make that happen?
Yeah, I haven't really been involved with the land acquisition yet, but a lot of times that's how it's possible is somebody will come to us and be very passionate that the county takes over ownership of the property. And a lot of times they'll be willing to sell it to us at I guess would be considered like a bargain sale. We do also have people on occasion that are willing to donate the land to make sure that it's open and available to the public. So those situations don't occur every day, but that is something I've seen in the past. So.
And Rick, when your group tries to assist with some of these acquisitions, does it matter to you whether it goes to the county or to the state?
No. I mean, like I said, it's just for us, it's about access. I mean, certainly I think we know how the state is going to manage the land. And I think we'd be happy with that. But no, I mean, if it's ran by a county and their intention is to make it available to the public, then absolutely we'd be excited about it. And yeah, part of what we've looked at too is like on some of these is um, or a few of them have been additions to already public areas, right? And so like it's a way that we can kind of make a public area a little bit bigger, or it somehow allows access, better access to that public area. That's kind of what we've looked at more than anything, is just like um, how we can make our dollars go farther with the purchase that way. But no, I mean, as I said, as long as it's available to the public, then I guess we're not too concerned about who's gonna manage it.
Yeah. Yeah. Ben, if you have someone come to you, and I know that maybe your experience is limited with this at this point, but if they say, I want this land to be public, I want the county to buy it from me. Is there a situation that you envision where you'd say, let's check with the DNR and have them buy it from me instead? Is it just like a matter of funding basically, or does it make any difference to people who owns it?
I would say probably not. I think again, similar to kind of what Rick was saying, as long as it's open to the public, I think most people think we're the DNR in a lot of cases anyway. So I don't think they, sometimes know the difference. But no, I mean, if for some reason there was something that came available and it's something we know that we would not be able to, fundraise for, I wouldn't be opposed either. For the DNR to do it, but they're in similar situation as we are, where they're not flush with money to be able to buy stuff, when it comes available all the time either. So
Mhm. Yeah, one other argument that I've heard at the State House too is that, well, the public land that we have right now, we need to focus on maintaining it. And some had alleged that perhaps some of it was poorly maintained. Rick, what do you see when you're out on public land in Iowa? Does it meet your standards?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess you could look at it. I look at it from a hunting perspective. That's how I typically recreate on public lands, and to me, I don't. As long as there's a road to get to it, that's all I care about. But I mean, again, you go out to Hawkeye Wildlife Area, and it's always well maintained. The parking lots are maintained, and roads are maintained. I mean, I could certainly, I guess I could see the argument better. I wouldn't say I'd see the argument, but I could see the argument better if it's more of a um, whether it's a hiking area or something like that, where people are going to be more concerned about the maintenance of it. But I guess every place I've ever gone to, I've never been concerned with the maintenance of the area.
Ben, the state land that you guys have, are you in charge? Is the county in charge of kind of overseeing it and maintaining it?
yeah, we have management agreements in place where we're responsible for basically upkeep of those areas. So but we only have two within the county that we manage. We have our Wapsie access area, and then we have a remnant sand prairie that we manage in the south end of Buchanan County for the state. So, but yeah, that's one thing that I'm really passionate about. I know I've worked with a lot of farmers over the years and heard some of the criticism of management of public land. So that's something that my staff and I work on pretty diligently. I definitely don't want our public lands to be breeding grounds for invasive species or anything that are spreading to private lands. Having worked in roadsides for 8 years, I know how passionate farmers are about Canada thistle and other invasives. So I try to make sure that we're taking care of those issues on our public lands. And then we put a big focus on trying to maintain our prairies and timbers the way that we feel that they need to. So we do a lot of prescribed burning in the spring, summer, and fall to try to handle our management objectives for our properties. We do a lot of timber stand improvement in the winter time. So, that's just kind of how we handle it in Buchanan County to try to address some of the public feedback on that type of stuff so it doesn't become a problem for us.
Yeah, and Roel, you mentioned that enormous amount of money that has been approved for public land acquisitions. Is there any concern about, how to maintain that land once it's acquired?
Absolutely. In fact, many of our parks are in need of maintenance, deferred maintenance issues, and so forth. And so, part of that fund could also include the enhancing of some of those existing public lands. And so, that's a very real concern and something that I think you need to be aware of as you kind of go on the with the goal of trying to increase public lands is having a long term plan for it as well. So yeah, it's a real cost and it does impact us.
All right,
And that is one of the.
go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that is one of the things we evaluate too when we go to do new land acquisitions is, every property that we take on does spread our staff a little thinner, and we always want to make sure that if we take something on, we think that we can feasibly manage it as well. So it is something that it's at least part of our criteria when we go to acquire something.
Um, Roel, I think you mentioned this before, but this will be a question out to everybody. How do we get how do we get people out into nature? How do you I guess Ben, there's probably public areas in your county that people are unaware of. How do you make them aware of that and how do you encourage them to get outside?
That's one thing I think we do really well, and this again was set up prior to me becoming the director here, but we have a really robust outdoor education program where we have two full-time naturalists that are very involved with all the schools in Buchanan County. And they do a good job of getting the schools out to our main park, Fontana Park here, and then some of our other outlying areas so that they kind of become familiar and know that they're available for them to use at any time. And then they also do outdoor education programs that are open to the public as well. So they do kayaking programs, a wide variety of things to get people out to those outlying areas. And I think that's been critical to our success here at the county. So
Yeah, how navigable is the Wapsi? Can you float it? Can you
not very right now. It's getting pretty sad. Like we're almost at water levels like last year. So
Indeed. Yeah. Well, I thought you mentioned something about maybe sort of a statewide initiative to encourage people to get outside. Did I hear you right before?
Well, there's just a high demand for that, right? With adding 1,200 people move to Texas every day, and so that's part of the driver for our increasing human population. And of course, there's that natural demand for getting outdoors, whether it's camping or hunting, fishing, etc. And so I kind of go. I think public land acquisition is a part of it, right? It serves as that anchor, but then innovations through private landowner partnerships and so forth could be something else that we've explored or we've implemented that kind of gives people some options. For example, I just looked it up while we were talking here. Have you ever heard of hip camp? So hip camp is kind of think of the Airbnb but for camping or
Yeah.
for out recreation. And I just Googled for the weekend of November 9th in Iowa, and there's all sorts of campsites and farmland access. You could rent a farmhouse for the weekend, that type of thing, uh, available across the state. And so that there's some private approaches I think that could help alleviate that demand.
That's interesting. I'll have to check that out. I'm
Yeah,
getting
check
coming
it
up.
out. It's a national type of. It's the Airbnb of camping, but I could go to Ben River Farms and rent a campsite for $35 a night, or I could go to. This is for Ben, Windy Goat Acres. Ben, you can get. I assume there's goats there, but maybe not. I don't know. The point at Lake Red Rock, etc. So there's cabins, there's things like that, And so that's an alternative. I'm not saying that's the solution, but I do think that it needs to be a combination of things. That's my opinion, just because I feel for the position you're in. Private land ownership is very important here in Texas, and maintaining those open spaces is an important aspect of our DNA, really. And so we're looking to try to kind of combine the two: acquisition where it makes sense, but also maintaining open space and developing incentives for private landowners that also have a broader public benefit. So that's kind of the conservation without compensation is just a conversation.
I assume that's the first time you've ever said that.
It's not the first time I've ever said that.
We have another audience question. This one's for Ben. Does timber stand improvement provide any income or support local lumber users such as millwork businesses?
Yeah, it kind of depends. So a lot of times the most timber stand improvement that, we're not really offering logs up for sale or anything like that, but we do have one of our areas, our Jaqua Forest area, where I think since we've owned it, we've been doing clear cuts and forest restoration in that area. So every 5 or 6 years, we'll select an area within the forest and have somebody come in and log it, and then go back in, do cleanup and replant, and so that we don't just have one single age class of trees throughout the area, and we, can kind of keep the forest managed better through that way. So that's probably the only way we've really done that before.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, Roel was talking about sort of the the economic side of things, the economic benefits of having public land. Rick, Iowa's known for its white-tailed deer. If we increase public land, will they come?
You cut out a little bit on the end there. I heard whitetails and public land.
He was asking if you would extend
As far as like the financial aspect of it,
Yeah, I mean, will people be drawn to, will hunters be more likely to come to Iowa if we increase the the range of which they can hunt?
well, it certainly wouldn't hurt. Obviously, like, as you said, we are known for our whitetails. They do have limited tags that they allow for that, so people can't just come into the state and shoot our whitetail. They limit the number of tags they allow based on the number of deer they want taken out. So, like I said, it's certainly not going to hurt. I think people are going to come either way to hunt whitetail. It's going to help out the number of deer in the state. But I think probably more importantly, who don't have to wait 5 years to get a tag or spend a bunch of money to get a tag. Certainly those public land areas are very important to them. I mean, there's plenty of people that go out on public land and hunt whitetails exclusively. More than anything because they don't have access to the private land. I mean, that's another thing that's probably going to get even harder in the future is guys that like to go out and hunt private land. They used to just whatever, ask a farmer, and sure, the farmer let them on. Well, now some of the farmers and landowners realize that can be worth a lot of money. So you start talking about leases and stuff that are not financially viable for a lot of hunters. Public land's it. That's where they have to go. So.
Mm-hmm. Ben, do you see public lands as an economic development or economic benefit for your county?
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, I think, we've really seen that with the additions that we've made here. It's definitely drawing people in and driving our local economies. One stat that I pulled up earlier from I guess we haven't really talked about the state Iowa Water and Land Legacy Fund, but one stat from that is that outdoor recreation accounts for $8.7 billion in consumer spending, 83,000 jobs, and $640 million in state and local tax revenue. So it does really impact all of our communities, and I do think it's important. So
Yeah. And you said, when did your new campground open?
this past April. So yeah, we've had a really big uptick in our revenue from bringing that online. So, and then, all the campers that come in, going to town, buying supplies, that type of stuff, it does really help out. So
Have you spot checked to see, are a lot of those people from Buchanan County that are camping there, or are you drawing people in?
quite a few of them are, but I just had a lady come into the office yesterday, and they're from Minnesota. They're the only ones we have out there right now, but yeah, they found us on our My County Parks website, and they've been here for most of the week. So we're definitely seeing more and more out of state visitors. But yeah, the majority of them are local.
Well, we are almost out of time. I guess I'll leave it up to the group. Is there something that we didn't discuss that you think is noteworthy that our audience should know about?
I have one departing thought, Jared, if I could add to kind of follow up with Rick and Ben. One of the things that's helped us in expanding outdoor access opportunities, whether it be public, private land, is really just the overall value. And so I think basic or very practical research that sort of informs that could help from a legislative process. So, for example, recently we did an economic assessment of whitetail deer hunting in Texas, and it's an $8 billion industry in the state, and so pretty significant economic engine. But it's that kind of information that helps in making the case for public land acquisition and supports the work that Rick and Ben others are trying to do. So that's just food for thought as you guys move forward.
Yeah. Ben, Rick, do you have any parting thoughts for us?
I mean, I guess the only thing that I would say that we've seen in our organization is just like you got to speak up about this stuff. Again, that's one of the things that we've done is try and especially this legislation that we talked about earlier, is just letting people know about it and talking to your representatives that, hey, like we enjoy public land. Why should we not be able to get some more of it if we've got willing buyers and willing sellers to be able to purchase it? But that's what you got to do. Obviously, we know that if the ag industry is what's driving the other side of it, we know they got plenty of money and plenty of advocates. So if you want to keep your public land, you have to speak up about it and let people know that.
We are getting the countdown that this thing is ending, so I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, panelists. It was enlightening, and I guess everyone can get off their computers and phones and go outside and enjoy the nice weather, right?
That's right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, guys.